It's day 21 of Lori Vallow Daybell's trial, and we are back in the courtroom. We ended yesterday with the defense playing a podcast Lori recorded with Melanie Gibb and others in 2018. Lori has entered the courtroom. She's wearing a navy blue long-sleeved shirt with a navy polka dot puffer-type vest. Defense attorneys and prosecutors are at their tables. Bailiff reminds everyone to turn off their phones and not to eat in the courtroom. All of the attorneys have left the courtroom to meet with Judge Boyce. Lori remains at her table with her back to the audience as she skims through a huge stack of papers. Jurors are being brought in. Larry and Kay Woodcock are in the courtroom today. Audience seats are packed and many are watching from overflow locations in the Ada County Courthouse and Madison County Courthouse in Rexburg. Prosecutors call Audrey Barattiero as their next witness. Fremont County Deputy Prosecuting Attorney Tanya Rawlings is questioning Audrey. Audrey lives in Missouri and was a friend of Lori's. They met at a conference in November 2018. Audrey stayed at Lori's house at the end of the conference. Zulema, Chad, and Melanie Gibb were also at the home. Rawling asked Audrey if she ever observed Lori and Chad together. Yes and no. I've observed every once in a while they look at each other. There was a vibe. Audrey next had contact with Lori in February 2019. Chad asked Audrey to be Lori's friend. He asked me to be her friend and that she needed a friend. He said that he couldn't talk to her all the time and that maybe I could be someone to uplift or be a friend, and I said okay. Audrey says she spoke with Lori every few weeks on the phone. We talked about more spiritual things, not as much about the things going on in personal lives. They saw each other in person in the summer of 2019 at a spiritual-based event in Utah. Audrey was living in Utah at the time of the conference. Lori stayed in a hotel. Audrey spent time with Lori, Zulema, Melanie Gibb, and some other women she didn't know. At the end of being there, Lori brought up wanting to work on her husband at the time. Rawlings asked what that means. Sometime close to that time, when I had seen her again, she all of a sudden, out of the blue, brought up all of this stuff about zombies and people being possessed. I hadn't heard of that before and had to basis for that. That's why she brought up that, because that was something that she was doing herself. Audrey said she was uncomfortable with what Lori was saying. Lori first told Audrey about this on the phone a few weeks earlier and then again at the conference. She brought up saying she wanted to work on trying to get a negative spirit out of Charles. Everyone started holding hands and I didn't know what they were doing. I thought maybe there was going to be a group prayer or something, so they all held hands, so I joined hands as well, thinking there would be a prayer. Then she started talking and she said she was going to try to get a spirit out of Charles. Lori said things like knives, fires, weapons. Audrey didn't say anything when it was her turn in the group. She left afterwards because she did not feel comfortable. She kept in touch with Lori on the phone. Audrey shares she first met Chad at a conference in St. George. She has read 3 of Chad's books. 2 months after she met him at the conference in 2018, Chad reached out to her on Facebook. Audrey responded and asked him some questions about his books. Chad and Audrey then started to talk on the phone. She began chatting with Lori on the phone about religious things and spiritual experiences. Audrey recalls talking to Lori about her move to Rexburg. A few times in the fall, I asked her how her daughter was doing. When I stayed in her house in November 2018, I met her daughter for a few minutes, so in the fall of 2019. I asked every once in a while, "How's Tylee doing?" because she was at college. Lori said, "She doesn't talk to me much these days." Audrey met JJ once and met Tammy once. Chad spoke to Audrey about Tammy and he said he had a near-death experience years before when he was told by a deceased relative that Tammy would pass away before she turned 50, This was around the end of January 2019 or February 2019. Chad told Audrey he felt he would get married again. He didn't tell Audrey for a while who he would marry, but eventually said Lori. Audrey said Chad told her that he had spoken to Tammy about his vision, plan to get remarried. Chad told Audrey he had been Methuselah and the Apostle James. Chad indicated Lori and Chad had been married during the time he was James the Apostle. Lori's name was Elena. Audrey moved to Missouri, and in October 2019, Lori asked if she and her niece Melanie could come to see church historical sites. They said they had some free time and they wanted to see the church sites. They had never seen them before. Audrey met up with Melanie and Lori, and they went to the temple in Adam Ondi Amon. Lori and Melanie also went to Liberty Jail. Audrey says Lori told her when someone has a zombie, they are possessed and need to be taken out. Chad had an idea that if someone was light or dark, it was based on whether they were predominantly good or bad. Lori told Audrey her husband was dark, and later on said JJ and Tylee were dark. She also said Tammy was dark. Lori said one or two of Melanie's children were dark also. When Melanie and Lori were in Missouri, they invited Audrey to stay in their hotel room so she didn't have to drive home. Audrey did, and that night, Lori said Tammy had a spirit in her that needed to be taken out. I told her I did not want to help and did not want to participate. She highly pressured me, saying, "You are supposed to be my friend. You're supposed to help me." I reiterated I didn't want to help, and she kept on. Audrey says later in the night she said a prayer. I said a prayer to Heavenly Father. I don't know what's going on. If there is something going on with Tammy and it needs to be taken out, I ask for Thee to help her. I asked she would be able to feel the love of God, and I ended the prayer. Audrey says if getting rid of dark spirits didn't work, Lori would come up with another idea. Another spirit got in. We needed to try again, etc. It just kept going and going and going. Rawlings asked Audrey if she remembers getting a text from Lori saying they had done a lot of work, but it didn't work, and another one got in, speaking about zombies. Lori asks Audrey if she had any suggestions to help, it would be appreciated. Audrey didn't know why Lori was asking her for guidance. Lori said Tammy's spirit was in a cage or jail and it needed to be freed because some person has overtaken her body. When I heard Chad Daybell say something to the effect of "why is the body still alive" or something like that, I realized that they must have taken things even further. They didn't intend for the person to be helped. They didn't want the person to live. Toward the later end of October 2019, Audrey went to Hawaii. Melanie and Lori picked Audrey up. They all stayed in a hotel. Rawlings asked Audrey what she recalls about her stay in Hawaii. It's very uncomfortable, Audrey says. She says Lori told Audrey Melanie was going through a very hard time and Melanie needed a friend. Audrey said she could be a friend. Audrey is crying. Shortly after getting there, Lori told me Tammy passed away. I asked her when, and she said it had been about a week. I asked her how she passed away, and she said, in her sleep.